talk to you guys about wintertime pond bassing. Fishing for bass in the wintertime in ponds can be a really tough bite, and that has to do a lot with, in the wintertime, bass slow down. Their metabolism slows down. The cold water just slows them down. Every attribute of them slows, which means your bite is going to be slower as well. So to adjust, that's the first thing about wintertime fishing in ponds, is you need to slow down. Whether that be just slowly crawling a jig or a creature bait along the bottom, or if you're just long pauses with a jerk bait, just whatever you do it slow and do it methodically. Make multiple casts at the same spot from multiple different angles. At this time of year, the bass are slow and sluggish, and that means for them, they don't want to have to chase down a meal. Oftentimes that means you have to put it right on their nose for them to eat it. And that also means because they're more hesitant, that also means multiple casts at the same piece of cover could produce fish that you wouldn't have got before. A lot of times reaction baits in ponds, the deal with them is it's not that you can't fish them, because a bass is going to react to a fast moving bait run by his nose, whether it's cold or not. The deal with wintertime is when it's cold, they don't react as well because they're not going to chase it. The whole deal is they're not chasing your bait as much. They'll still do it occasionally. If they really want it, they'll come after it. But most of the time, they're not going to chase it down. They're going to wait for it to come to them. So that means when you're fishing a reaction bait, again, fish it methodically. Lots and lots of casts, because you have to get it to run perfectly over a fish's nose. The next thing about pond bassing is some areas to fish. You're looking, one of the best areas to fish in a pond or in any body of water is shallow water near deep water. Because in the wintertime, deeper water tends to be more stable. It tends to be a stable temperature. Generally can be a bit warmer. It'll hold oxygen fairly well this time of year. And they just seem to like congregating up deeper water this time of year. That doesn't mean they won't go shallow, and that's why you have to have the shallow water near deep water. Most of the time when a fish goes shallow in the winter, my thought is it has two ideas. It's either going shallow to warm up in the warmer waters. If the sun has been hitting a place all day, it'll be warmer. So a fish is either going there to warm up, or it's going there to feed, or both. So when you fish shallow in the wintertime, in a pond, mind you, shallower. When I say shallow, I mean about 1 to 4 feet. So if you're fishing shallow in the wintertime, often those fish are feeding, which means when you're casting shallow, don't rule out shallow just because it's wintertime. Oftentimes, those fish in the shallower water are the ones who are there to feed, and they're more active. So those are your better chance at getting bites, rather than these fish that are just kind of hibernating out deep. You drag a bait in front of them, they're not going to do anything about it. The shallow fish are hungry, often hungry. So definitely, you want shallow water near deep water, so that a fish can move up to heat. If the sun starts beating down on a nice warm day, that water will heat up as well, and they'll move out of that deep water to that shallow water, that first shallow water they can get to. And so the closer it is to deep water, the better. Finally, another big key with the wintertime pond fishing, it has to do with timing. A lot of times it's just a little bit of window. There'll be a window here, a window there, depending on how long you fish. Sometimes there's an early morning window, and sometimes there's an evening window, but most often there tends to be about a midday window, when that sun is at its highest, and that heat is really beating down on those small little pockets of shallow water. Often in ponds, lots of trees will have lots of leaves fall off, and they'll get in the water, and as they decay, they turn very dark, and they'll hold a lot of heat. from the sunlight. So those fish will get up in those leaves. And the same thing that attracts the predators will attract the prey. That heat, sometimes different algae and plankton will also be, manifest in the sunlight. So they'll be attracted to, which will mean an opportunity for bass to feed. So timing can be key. The warmest part of the day, that's when they're going to go shallow to get that warmth and to get that feed. Versus bass might feed all day in the spring, especially on a cloudy day. They might feed all day long. But in the winter, there are little windows when they go to feed, because their metabolism is slow. They're not eating as much. So that's a big thing. Is fish those windows, learn when they are, and get better at fishing. Last thing is just baits and presentations. Some of my personal preferences here. A lot of my times you just have to feel out the fish and your fishery. Finessier and smaller presentations tend to be my favorites, though I do like different styles of baits. Today I was throwing beaver style baits. I was throwing a Yum Bad Mama. I've been trying it out recently. I've been really liking it. I'm throwing some other baits too. This happens to be a Bruiser Baits Avenger or something of that nature. Just a Bruiser beaver bait. I've been throwing a Pit Boss. Sweet Beavers, D-Bombs by Missile, all great baits. Love beaver style baits. Here's why. They have big, thick bodies, which means they're going to spread out over the top of the leaves. They're not going to get buried up because they're not slender. They tend to have very little claw movement, which is what you want. Something more subtle. It's not going to look unnatural. Because the thing is, when you're fishing slow, a bass gets a way better look at your presentation. When we're fishing on really slow and on the bottom, those fish can really get a look at it. So everything is key, from the color, from the line size, to the hook, to sense even. Get as natural as you can get. That's why usually I tend to go with lighter line finesse presentations. A drop shot, a shaky head. Those tend to be some of my favorites, along with small jigs on light line. Guys, wintertime pond fishing is a tough ordeal, but sometimes you just gotta get out there and do it. Remember just to slow down, fish methodically, fish those areas that warm up the fastest and stay warm longest, the places that get the most sunlight for the longest amount of time. Fish there slow, methodically, with natural colored baits. I guarantee you'll get some success as long as